Alright guys, welcome back. So today what we've got is a Yugo N-Pap Underfolder from Century Arms. Now this is borrowed from a buddy of mine. He just picked it up brand new, brought it to me, and he's letting me run some rounds through it and kind of get my opinions on it to do videos for the channel. So definitely thank you to him for letting me do this. But I've had this gun for a few days now, and I've had it out to the range multiple different times, running some rounds through it, and kind of getting a feel for it, seeing how it's going to work and function, and sort of building my opinions up on this rifle. So today I'm just going to take you through it, kind of work my way back, from front to back on this thing, and let you guys know how everything worked out, what worked, what didn't, some pros and cons, and things like that. But like I said, I've had it for a few days now, and I've spent the better part of 2 days out at the range running some rounds through it and kind of getting a feel for it, things like that. And for the most part, it's ran pretty good. But we'll go ahead and start at the front of the gun. We do have just your standard slant brake that a lot of your standard AKs come with. You know, it's not the most effective thing, but it does work, kind of like the A2 birdcage of the AR world. But it's there, it does work. But there are better options out there if you want to upgrade it, things like that. It does come with a cleaning rod. I know some of Century's guns that they're putting out, they got rid of the cleaning rod. Now, one thing I did notice with this is while shooting, that cleaning rod does like to work its way out. Pretty much every time I took it and put a magazine through it, that thing started walking forward. So if it were me, I would take it out, put it in my range bag, and just have it handy if you need to, knock out a stuck case or something like that. But it is nice that they do include it. The wood on this thing is fairly nice. I mean, nothing too fancy. It does its job. It didn't heat up really bad when out shooting. Things like that. So it does its job. Not the best looking wood, but it is tight. There's no wobble in that stuff. Very nicely fit wood. So it does work, and I know there's a lot of options, and again, if this were my gun, I would probably do some upgrades to the new Midwest Industry rails that they have out, like the M-Lock rails and stuff. Midwest Industries is doing a lot of cool stuff for the AKs now, so that's what I would do if it were mine, but the wood it comes with definitely gets the job done. Now, this rifle did come with one Magpul 30-round PMag, and that's only one I had to use out of the range since I don't own an AK right now. I don't have any mags for them, so I just ran this one particular magazine, and I do believe this is the Gen 1 magazine. I didn't see any type of steel reinforcements anywhere on it, so I do think it's a Gen 1, but it ran just fine, had no issues with it. Now, I wasn't beating the rifle up or doing any type of torture testing or anything like that on it, but for just normal use, running rounds, things like that, it worked just fine. Moving back to the trigger, I've had an N-Pap in the past, and I've had some experience with other Century rifles, and normally they put the Tapco G2 triggers in them, and they've always worked really, really well, but this one actually has the Century Arms trigger in it. I think it's the same ones that they're putting like in their American-made guns, the RAS-47, the C-39s, and things like that. It does have the big C on the side of it, and overall, it's a really good trigger. It breaks right around 6 pounds. I tested it before I shot it. I haven't tested it again to see if it maybe lightened up after it worked in a little bit. But before any type of shooting or anything like that, it was breaking right at 6 pounds. It has a nice, clean, single-stage break, nice reset. Overall, really good trigger. The grip it comes with is, your standard kind of run-of-the-mill type AK grips. Has some nice check ring on the side of it. Not a bad grip, but I would definitely change it out, again, if it were mine, to like the Magpul grip or something like that. But the one it comes with will definitely work. Now, you might notice on the side of the rifle, the safety selector does have the cutout if you do want to hold the bolt open for whatever reason. I know that's particularly nice for people who go to ranges and you have to show clear or use chamber flags or something like that at the range. You can use that, lock your bolt open, and you can be good at those types of ranges. Now, we talked about the wood on this thing being really tight, and that kind of goes through the entire rifle. Everything on this rifle is very, very tight. And while we're talking about that safety selector, it was one of the things that was very, very tight, and I actually had to do a little bending on it, a little tweaking on it to get it to be usable. Now it works just fine, but when it first came in, it was almost a bear to try to get the thing on safe and fire things like that. But now it's working really good, and pretty happy with it. Moving on back to the underfolder part, the stock on this thing. Again, it was something that was very, very tight when I first received it. It took a lot of force and effort to get that thing to fold up underneath it, but I spent one evening just kind of running it back and forth, collapsing it, opening it back up, things like that. And now it's working okay, still a little bit tight. I wish it was a little more loose, but it's working much, much better now. And overall, the function and the fit and everything of that underfolder is working perfectly. So let's go ahead and move, I guess, to the inside of the rifle for a minute. On the inside, everything is very well machined, very well put together. I think they did a very good job on that. Everything runs smooth. The bolt runs very smooth, and again, everything is machined good. The bolt carrier, things like that, everything looked good. In my opinion, the piston, all that stuff looked really, really well. Now the magazine goes in this gun and comes out just fine, very easily. The magazine release is easy to get to. It's not oversized or anything, but very easy to use. And the mag, at least this Magpul magazine, locks up super tight in there. I mean, there is absolutely no wobble whatsoever. And normally when you get something that tight, the magazines can be hard to get in and out. But they did a really good job, I guess, blending that a little bit, making it to where the magazines will go in and out with ease, but it's still a very tight lockup. There probably will be a little bit of wobble if you use like the surplus steel magazines, but again, I didn't have one to try out. But normally, if a polymer magazine fits really tight, you might have a little movement with a steel magazine, but overall not too bad. So now the function of this rifle has been very, very good. I did have one failure to feed early on in the shooting and testing. It was probably in maybe the third or fourth magazine that I put through it. I put the magazine in, was shooting somewhat quickly, and got about halfway through the magazine, and I did have a failure to feed. I stripped that round out of there, put the magazine back in, and then it ran just fine, and it continued to run fine throughout the rest of the testing and shooting that I did with this rifle. And talking about the shooting, it does have the underfolder on it, so you can fold that up underneath and still use the rifle. You can get to the trigger, the safety, run the bolt, get the magazine out, all that stuff. It will all work. Definitely not the most ideal way to shoot the gun, of course. You definitely want to put the stock in your shoulder for the most stability and accuracy and things like that. But for some reason, if you do have it all folded up and you need that rifle quickly, you can pull it out and shoot it just like that, and it will be just fine. Okay, so we've talked about a lot of the functions, some of the features and things like that. So now let's get into one of the big things that happened to this rifle that's definitely a negative. It has to do with the front sight. Now, when I first got this gun, I always, bore sight most of my rifles, and just to see where the sights are at, if it's new or if I'm putting new sights on it. I know it's not a good way to sight your guns in, but at least it'll give you an idea. You can kind of square it up, get it close, at least get you on paper for when you do go to sight them in. So I put the bore sight in here, and the sights were a little bit off, so I moved them over with my that Magnamatic AK tool. If you got an AK, I highly recommend getting one of those. Those tools are just awesome and definitely a must-have. But I moved it over and everything seemed fine. Everything was lining up. So I got out to the range and started shooting at 50 yards and 100 yards, and it was doing fine. And then all of a sudden, my shots were off. And, I'm human, so I thought maybe it was just me pulling the shots or being too fast on the trigger or something like that. But then I noticed that I looked down at the front sight and it wasn't where I had adjusted it. So I got to messing around with it and noticed that the front sight on this thing has gone completely loose. And you can just take it and with your fingers and move that front sight all the way to one side and all the way to the other side. So really the front sight on this thing has been rendered useless. I guess if you had to use it, you can still use it, but you're not going to be, making any precise shots at any type of distances with this thing. So he's definitely going to have to get a hold of Century Arms or do something to see if they can get that fixed for him. Because, like I said, the sights are pretty much useless on this thing. Now, talking about the sights, another, I guess, negative or drawback with this thing is the rear sight leaf on this is a little bit canted. But I started looking at it, tore things apart, and started doing some measurements on it just to see what was actually out of whack, because you can get canted sights with these things. But I got to looking at it, and the rear sight block and all that stuff looks straight. It actually looks like there might be a defect or something wrong with actually just the leaf on that thing, because I actually took the leaf out and looked down it and everything looks straight. So I don't know what type of leaf that is or what happened, or maybe it was machined wrong or whatever. but it is a little bit cockeyed, which isn't a big deal because like I said, I pushed that front sight over, got it sighted in, and I was hitting steel at 100 yards just fine. So it's not that far off, but just something to point out because a lot of people look at their candid sights and stuff, first thing when they're buying an AK. So I just thought I would mention that. So it's kind of a negative, but it was able to be sighted in, so I guess it's kind of within spec. But the real downfall again was that front sight, and he's definitely going to have to do something about that when he gets this back. But overall, guys, the rifle was fun to shoot. It's machined well. Everything's nice and tight. And other than really that front sight giving me fits like that, being loose and having to be replaced or repaired or whatever, the Yugo N-Pap Underfolder from Century Arms did really, really well. And for the money, this is definitely a rifle to take a look at. I think he said he paid $650, under $700 for this thing. So definitely a good price as far as AKs go. I know it's hard to find an AK for under $700 or $750 anymore. So if you're looking for an AK and you like an underfolder or something like that, this Yugo N-Pap Underfolder from Century Arms definitely seems like a very good option. But anyhow, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions or comments about this video or anything else you see here on the channel, ask those in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to get back with you. And as always, I appreciate everybody watching. I appreciate everybody subscribing, and we'll catch you in the next one.